And we're live. Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Today I'm joined by Russell Boyce and Amy Canavan for the Monday ACSOM Bulletin. At some point today we expect to be joined also by Tony Haggerty. And whilst we'll be in the flow of topical discussions involving Celtic, I'll just stay around. I'll just stick around if that's all right with you guys. And we'll do the full hour together as a team. Great. Right, it's Monday morning. The last few Monday shows have been pretty positive because we've been racking up the results. That was not the case on Saturday. What is it about Livingston, Amy Canavan, that we simply cannot work out? We can't work out how to beat them.
No, and they're turning into a little bit of a bogey team, and perhaps they've been that for quite some time. I think more than anything, there's been a lot of comments over the last few days, is it anti-football that they play? I don't buy into that, to be honest. I think they play a way that, will get them a positive result. And I think kudos to David Martindale, to Livingston. It's not my style of football, and it's not many Celtic fans' style of football. If Celtic were going out and playing that, I don't think we'd all be very supportive of it. But, it gets the job done for Livingston, and what their aims are, for the season, where they want to be, just simply kind of staying in this league, pushing for top six. That is always kind of the expectation and the goal really for Livingston. That's what they're doing. If they can come to Parkhead and get a point, they've already grabbed 3 off Celtic already. That's 4 massive points towards Livingston's season. So I think first and foremost, a lot of credit does simply have to go to them. The game plan was obviously, sit back, defend, box, do not concede, and they've executed that expertly well. But from a Celtic point of view, it's just frustration. I don't think you can... you don't want to, you said it yourself there, the last few Mondays have been relatively positive, and everyone's been on a high, and that's great. But you don't want to yo-yo between the extremes of, absolute joy, and then you can't just come today just because it's not the greatest result really to batter on all the negatives. It was a frustrating afternoon, but I don't think Celtic were really looking any likely to score. I think you could have given another 90 minutes, and I think Livingston would have stayed resolute. Obviously, it'd have been different because they were down 10 at the end. But I think it was just simply one of those games that everybody knows what you mean when you say that, but they were just extremely hard to break down.
There were some excellent points that will break through during the 1 hour discussion, Russell. I think when you look at Livingston, the flip side to a team like them with that type of budget would be that teams like St Mirren or Dundee have come to Celtic Park and they've not had that same rigid game plan. As Amy says, it's often called anti-football. I think I've called it that myself. However, if you come to Celtic Park and you don't play that way, if you're that level of side, that's the kind of side who are going to be worrying the relegation places come the end of the season, then you could be on the end of a hammering. I remember before the game, people in the comment section were talking about 5-6-0 wins for Celtic. It's easy to get carried away, Russell. I must admit, I tempered that before the game because I've seen this movie before, time and time again, and watching Celtic over the years. What I would ask, though, is when you're faced with that and you're sitting there at half-time thinking, well, he's not going to make a change at half-time. Then it gets into that 60-minute mark, half an hour to go. It's 75 minutes. That's where I was watching it thinking to myself, what do we do now to change it? What can you do as a manager when actually you're up against 11 men behind the ball in the final third? In fact, it's probably in the final quarter of the park. And it's total control. Celtic are in total control of the game, but we just cannot break it down. What do you do as Ange sitting there? You've already made your team selection. We'll talk about the team selection. But what do you do to make that change?
The different timelines obviously dictate what changes you can make, but you would certainly like to have thought at half-time in the dressing room, the focus would have been on the intensity of the play and taking more risks with the ball. Every pass was a safe pass. So 85% possession, it may well have been, but it was 85% possession that Livingston were completely comfortable with Celtic having. As the ball was going sideways, man by man, it was the easiest, most predictable football to defend against, particularly when you're an organised outfit that came out with that strategy from minute one. Celtic played into their hands. I know it's difficult and we don't want people to be going one extreme and the other, like Amy says, but unfortunately that's what the manager did, because the manager said on Wednesday it was the best half an hour of football we've played since he took over. His quote. So from that to what we've seen on Saturday, it's not just Celtic fans or fan media or the actual national media that are going from one extreme to the other. You've got your own manager building up the hype on Wednesday after the game, and you could actually argue rightfully so. Such was the nature of the performance, particularly the first half hour that he alluded to. And then it's fell off a cliff on Saturday. So there is two extremes, unfortunately. And that's the reality we live in. And I don't think it's about, no one's trying to headline grab here or anything like that. You're calling what you see. And unfortunately right now, Celtic are a bit of a yo-yo team in terms of performances. That'll lead to yo-yo feedback from the likes of myself, and you've got to criticise when criticism is due. And Saturday was abysmal.
Well, I think that's fair comment, Russell, because we had an opportunity to go top of the league. And one of the biggest things that was mentioned, by the way, Anthony Haggerty is waiting in the wings. He is waiting like a coiled spring to come in and add to the conversation. But I agreed with Ange Postecoglou. I thought that half an hour at Easter Road was the best I'd seen Celtic perform under him. There was a similar kind of half hour against Real Betis away from home, which I thought we were brilliant. But that was the best. But we actually gave them credit following that game for the control, the manner in which we controlled the rest of the game. After that half hour, Hibs came back into it. We lost Tommy Roderick, but we controlled the rest of the game and we managed the rest of the game. There's a different type of game management, though, when you clearly have a game plan of getting the ball out wide to the wingers, and your right winger actually was more often Ralston than Abada, and getting the ball into the middle. And I'm going to talk about that once I bring Anthony Haggerty into the ACSOM Bulletin. There he is. He was waiting in the wings and he has entered the fray.
As ragged as a Georgios Giakoumakis last-minute penalty, but I've arrived. Okay. So,
we will certainly be talking about last-minute penalties, and it was a massive talking point. And after the game, I was talking about the penalty and everything else with Laura. And what I said to her, Amy, was that, I've been in the situation where the emotions run high. We've been on the end of absolute tankings after the game on the ACSOM Bulletin, be that against Rangers last season, the 4-1 game, the European performances when we're getting beat 4-1 home and away. And sometimes it's hard to keep the emotion in check. After the game against Livingston, what I tried to do was not to overreact. It's a nothing each against Livingston. Some people are saying that it kind of shows Ange up in terms of his team selection, the selection of the penalty taker. Is this all great with hindsight, Amy? Because you score that penalty, it's a rubbish game, it's a rubbish performance, and we win it, and we're having a completely different discussion. So what's your thoughts on the selection process, first and foremost? There was a few changes, and Ange came in for some criticism. There's going to have to be some more changes on Thursday. That's why it's relevant to chat about that today.
Yeah, I can kind of understand why Giakoumakis was started. I think this is obviously a Livingston side that Ange has already faced as well. He's now got that beauty of facing sides before. It's no longer like the first kind of showing. So he would have known that this kind of resolute performance from Livingston was coming. And I think that's why he's went Giakoumakis, to try and be that little bit rough and tough and that little bit of a presence up top, perhaps over Kyogo. But in the same breath, I think, you stick with a winning formation, you play your best players at all time. And I know there's been a few things come out, if Kyogo was perhaps carrying an injury. But to me, if he's fit enough to play whatever it was, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was, then, I think then surely he could put a 45 in, bury the game in the first half and then take them off. So I know that's slightly times are a bit off, but you catch my drift there. If you're fit enough to come on, I feel you're fit enough to start. Or what's the point of you sitting on the bench really and taking up a spot? So there is a little bit of frustration for me. I think Abada as well, it's a tricky one because he's not been performing well recently. He's not. But I think the big talking point is obviously is up top and Kyogo being dropped. So I can understand Ange's perspective. And I think even if there was the win, if that win was great, I think we would still probably be talking about Giakoumakis starting and Kyogo being dropped. And I think I'd still probably come out with the same answer. But I just feel at all times, you should have a plan B, and there's still no plan B.
See, this again has been discussed before, Amy, and it's been highlighted after a poor performance on Saturday. I'm going to come to Tony and ask the question. There was a moment, it came to me probably a lot earlier than the 75th minute, but I thought to myself, if we don't make the change now, we're not going to get a win here, because it was just we were repeating ourselves. We were playing the ball out wide, the ball was coming in, and I don't know if Ange Postecoglou is looking at Giakoumakis more of a target man than Kyogo. We know that from what we've seen so far, Kyogo's not great in the air, tends to get stuck under the ball. But unfortunately, Giakoumakis, he was unsuccessful if that was the role for him. I counted 17 or 18 crosses in the first half. I'm guessing it would have been similar in the second half. If you're crossing the ball in 35 to 40 times in a game and you're not getting anything, any result from it, Tony, then your game plan's not working. But you realise that, not in the 96th minute, do you? You realise that earlier on. Amy's talking about a plan B. It's kind of highlighted that again this time round. You're sitting there as a gaffer. You can make a change. You can make substitutions. Do we have that plan B?
Clearly not. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. That was on the manager on Saturday. He called it wrong from the get-go. From dropping Kyogo to parachuting Abada in for no reason. You know what I mean? Playing high balls to a guy who was nowhere near them, but clearly was intent on getting crosses into the box. But, Celtic never fashioned one shooting opportunity in the whole 90 minutes. Not one, apart from the penalty, which they got fortuitously. Still contrived to miss it. And then again, it's all right saying that the penalty taker was, discussed before and Giakoumakis was on them, but you've got a guy who's rattled two of them confidently and expertly into the net. Until he misses, Juranovic should have took the penalty. It's all right saying it after Giakoumakis has missed, but, Callum McGregor missed one and it was given to Juranovic, wasn't it? After he'd scored the previous one against Betis. So all sorts of decisions were wrong. But the decision to drop Kyogo, and you can say whether he was injured or whatever, or he needs a rest. But was there any need, apart from the beat-on for Rogic change, to tinker with that team anymore after the display that they had, or the first half display at Easter Road? I don't think so. Well, Michael Johnson's come back and he's looked hungry and looked quite creative at times, you know what I mean? So starting with the side that dismantled Hibs in the first half an hour, Rogic apart, you were building momentum. All the momentum, all the tempo, everything that you'd built in the month of October, you shattered it, and the end was Saturday. And it's no surprise the way Livingston were going to play. You have to credit David Martindale. He does get results against Celtic and knows how to get them. But he realised Celtic won't change, so we'll just stick to this. Played Livingston twice this season, and Livingston have taken 4 points from 6. That tells you it all, really. And you're loath to criticise, but I still get back to it. That was on the manager on Saturday. I felt let down by the manager on Saturday. Felt let down by the result. And disappointment, but had they scored the penalty, they would have stolen it. The fact that they didn't play well annoyed me too. Because they had been playing well. They'd been in finding ways to win. And on Saturday, you knew they were going to have to find a way to win, and they couldn't do it again against Livingston. That's twice the managers had a go at Livingston and not been able to come up trumps. That's a concern.
One point that Tony made there, Russell, was in relation to actual shots on target. When you look at the possession of 85% over a 96-minute period, I'm looking at the stats and they reckon that we had 2 shots on target. Is the penalty one of them? I'm not quite sure. 2 shots on target in 96 minutes when 85% possession. Now, last season, I think on ACSOM, time and time again, we were critical of the fact of generally Ryan Christie got it, but it was the shoot on sight policy. We didn't really have that. We seemed almost reluctant. Now, the problem with that, though, is every time, for example, David Turnbull looked up to see what his opportunity was, he would have had 4 or 5 black jerseys in front of him. So, again, the question remains, Russell, what do you do? What do you change? What do you actually change? Because you've got Tommy Rogic against Hibs, who was crafting chance after chance. He was being brought down on the edge of the box, which creates a different type of challenge for your opposition. You take him out, but we can't be a one-man team. We've got to find another way. So at that moment in time, how do you stretch that back line? How do you actually craft a chance? Or do you go back to Cameron Carter-Vickers against Ross County and try a speculative effort now and again? Because we weren't even doing that.
Well, I think that's one of the things that was frustrating the fans. There was opportunities in the second half. We had the ball on the edge of the box, and I think sometimes you've got to go back to basics. Have a dig. I know it sounds really simpleton, and everyone's going to go, well, that's why you're not a football manager. I get that, right? But I also don't get paid tens of thousands of pounds to be one either, every month. So to me, they've got to be braver on the ball. They've got to have efforts on goal to score goals. That's the simplest rule in football. If you don't have an effort at goal, you can't score one. And right now, we never took a chance. Whilst it might be a packed box with Livingston players left, right, and centre, deflections, ricochets into the path of a runner. These things can all happen as well if you don't feel like you're going to actually hit the target, such as the level of bodies in front of you. But if you don't take risks, here's one thing as well I thought that we never did. We never missed a man with a pass. It's side to the side to each person. If the plan of attack for Ange, and he's going to be stubborn in this for 90 minutes against Livingston, is to get the ball wide, then here's my advice: get the ball out wide quicker. It does not need to go through three players who, again, at times I felt maybe wanted that extra couple of seconds on the ball that for an 8-yard sideways pass wasn't really necessary. So I just feel that we could be missing men out. If you are going to be really stubborn and you feel that the best way, and he's at training every day, so I'm not going to argue with him. If he felt the best way to beat Livingston was get it out wide and bring crosses in the box for Giakoumakis, fine. That's his homework done. That's what he's came up with. That's on him if it doesn't work. But I think it was done at a pedestrian pace. I think it was done slowly, methodically, and I'll use the word again, very predictable. We have to take chances. Where I know what you're saying. You're asking me what would we do differently. Well, I think that comes down to whether if Rogic is missing, it looks like Postecoglou's identified. We have to get crosses in the box then, because we don't have another player that can do Tom Rogic things. Fair enough. But if that's the case, the instruction is to be get the ball out wide quicker. Miss a man. I didn't see any Celtic player take a risk on Saturday. And you've got to take risks when the plan A that we'd seen for the full first half, the full opening hour, the full 70 minutes before the subs were made hadn't worked. So if it's going to be get it out wide, just try and do it with a wee bit of intensity. Try and play like there's a Scottish Premier League title at stake. That's what I would like to have seen.
It would have been interesting to be sitting top of the league, albeit for 24 hours. But I think the big concern, and I'll come to yourself first, Amy, is say the fixtures run and we continue to win in our rival, because I think it will start to even out into a title race involving Celtic and Rangers. No disrespect to Dundee United and Hearts, who I think have started off very, very well, but we've started to see the intensity, or the momentum rather, dropping off a wee bit. And that's going to happen, right? Because they don't have the know-how, which is important to be in a title race. I mean, it takes season after season, and they don't have the depth of squad for that to be maintained throughout the season. And I think, and I'm not going to write any of them off, we will drop points, I'm guessing, to some of the other teams in the top 6 this season. But they will be dropping off, and it'll be a Celtic and Rangers title challenge. That is my prediction, based on what I've seen this season. If that's the case, Amy, and we go into that game on the 2nd of January, 4 points behind, I guess after Saturday, what the big question is, do we have the mettle for a game like that? The big game, the must-win game. You go into the derby at Celtic Park. Do we have the mettle for that, do you think?
I think going off the back of Saturday, no. Because I don't think there's I don't know if it's leadership, and I'm not meaning leadership as in a captaincy of Callum McGregor. I'm meaning leadership up front. There's nobody going, I'm going to take this guy on, I'm going to get to the byline, I'm going to create something. So there's not leadership in that sense. I don't, from Saturday, I certainly didn't see that. I don't think anybody was, using their initiative, taking the initiative to go, this is a resolute Livingston side. Somebody needs to try, batter on here and try and break in. And I understand that's a hell of a lot easier said than done, because I think if we could all do that, then, like as Russell said, we'd all be football managers. But I just worry right now on the back of Saturday if we do or not. I think in general, I certainly do believe that we do it as well. I hope that Celtic do, but going purely from Saturday, there was nothing on show that would, fill me with confidence in that.
Well, I'm keen to get the comments coming in, so I will be rifling through those whilst our contributors discuss the big talking points. Let's have a look then at the changes, which may or may not have worked. Abada in for Johnson. Amy, do you think that worked for Ange Postecoglou on Saturday?
No, I don't think it did. I think in recent weeks, Abada's not really been showing up. I think he's going to I certainly think he's going to be in for a bit of a fight now with Forrest gradually, hopefully getting back. Hopefully he can get a fair bit of form under his belt. It's going to take a little bit of time to get him back up to the levels that we know and kind of expect from James Forrest. But Abada's just simply not performing. I think he's kind of a ghost. He started off so brightly, in that little three up top, and everybody was ranting and raving about all of them. But while Jota and Kyogo have continued in the headlines, Abada's just fallen by the wayside a little bit. I don't think he's not taking on that man, kind of that leadership that we're talking about. He's not really eager to get to the byline. He's going for that safe pass, and he really is relying on Ralston or whoever it may be to support him and to do the dirty work going forward.
Tony, see, when you look at that, I think the introduction of James Forrest was welcomed by us all. How important is that going to be, not just for the performance of the team, but also for the development of Abada, who, as Amy quite rightly say, he's been pretty inconsistent, and he's been off the boil for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, so we can see that. So I don't know what kind of week he had in training, but he must have been playing like Garancha, you know what I mean, or Jarzino or something, because the manager has parachuted him in from nowhere, hasn't he? So I can only assume that he thought that was the way, as Russell said, to pepper the box or just go all out and cross it into the box for a centre forward. But the Celtic fans are crying out to see the two guys play up front, the two through the middle, Giakoumakis and Kyogo, right? But he's clearly not going to do that. But he's going to have a serious think about it, because he shoehorned Giakoumakis into the team there. He shoehorned Abada into the team. And it was more in it seems now that it was more in hope than anything else, really, because the two of them just failed to turn up. And you can't have that. You were building something. You were building real momentum. And the 2 points that you gained at Easter Road with Rangers conceding, you've just immediately chipped them away and undone all the good work that you did in October by going to 3 difficult away venues and winning. And you can't win at home against Livingston. Celtic supporters were bitterly disappointed on Saturday. And they were bitterly disappointed at the performance because it was pretty insipid. You can see there was only one team trying to win the game, but there was another team trying not to lose it. So defending's an art in football as well. They defended very well. They were saying to Celtic, break us down. And they just seemed to run out of steam, run out of ideas. And that was concerning. As you say, the manager sat to however many minutes before he threw Kyogo on the park. Kyogo should have been on at half time. It clearly wasn't working. And when Anthony Ralston is your star winger and throwing umpteen balls into the box, and see if you're a centre forward, see if you're Giakoumakis, you'd be like, why am I not on the end of it? Why am I not anticipating? Good centre forwards kind of read where the ball's going to go, anticipate or gamble. I didn't see Giakoumakis doing any of those things. He's meant to be an out-and-out centre forward. And then his penalty kick, I mean, seriously, that's my pet hate, that 1 yard run up and lackadaisical, dab at a football. Rattle it. If the goalie makes a save and you've rattled it, so be it. But you rattle that ball as hard as you can, because most of the time the goalie will not be able to save it, because it'll be travelling at such speed that even if he gets his hand to it, it's going to go in the net. Bit of speed and accuracy. That was neither nor. That was a pass back, and it was microcosmic of his game. He wasn't in the game, wanted to be the hero. Well, be the hero then. Go and smash that into the net. And earn Celtic the win. But he didn't, and it was just that the Celtic supporters were so frustrated on Saturday. Because it didn't have to be like that, but that stemmed from the manager to the players that were playing, and just kind of, I don't know, there was just that. I don't know, but Saturday there was it just wasn't on point, was it? You have to be on point, and there was a few things just that weren't there. There was a circuit not connecting on Saturday, let's put it that way, which worried you.
It's concerning. You don't get much time to, actually look back on it, because before you know it, we'll be in another game on Thursday, and there's plenty to talk about there as well, Russell. But on some of those points, when Giakoumakis, even though he's not had a good game, he was poor. And by the way, I think the worst of it is Obileye, for me, was Livingston's best player on the park. We will be talking about the fact that there's been an allegation of racial abuse there as well. But he knows that he's come through that game, even though he was sent off in the 91st minute. And he's not even been challenged. So let's say, and somebody may have the stats there, that we've had 30 or 35 plus crosses into that box. He's dealt with them pretty confidently. And what I would have wanted is for my front man, my pivot, my spearhead, to have given him a torrid time throughout that entire period. And he didn't. He didn't give him a torrid time. So, yeah, he's been sent off, but he will have been pretty happy with his own performance. Now, the big question is, we're going in on Thursday. Giakoumakis has missed a penalty. What do we do now if we get another one? Does it revert back to Juranovic?
I think it will go back to Juranovic now, probably. I mean, if you've missed one and it was taken in such a manner that, I mean, it was like his first ever penalty in his life. He looked...
And we know he's good on the penalties last season.
I know, because we were told that was the only reason he was top scorer in Eredivisie, and I kind of pushed back on that. But the ball looked like it must have weighed a ton, that it's just trundles on the ground. Very rarely you see a keeper actually just collect the ball from a penalty. Usually they've got to push it away. I was at the opposite end of the ground and I thought, it's a daisy cutter. He's hit a daisy cutter in the 93rd minute. I couldn't believe that was a striker that was doing that. And it compounded a miserable afternoon for Giakoumakis, who, you're absolutely right. See if you feel like the crosses covering the box maybe aren't of a standard that you'd like. So I'm sure that'll be his argument why he's not anticipating it, Tony, which I'm not saying neither's right or wrong. But see if it's not going your way, and your defender's got a cigar in his mouth and he's having a stroll on a Saturday afternoon at Celtic Park, do something else. Do something different. Ruffle him up.
Mm-hmm.
Stand on his toes before the next corner that we get. Do something. Because what it did prove was it didn't actually take much to get the defender's blood boiling.
No, you're right. It was a wee shove.
So that was a missed trick. That was a missed trick all afternoon, because he should have been in a position, as you say, Paul, of complete contention with how he's played. We're nearly there. They're not threatening with anything, and yet it didn't take much for him to react. So Giakoumakis showed a lack of streetwiseness about himself by not actually asking the question of the defender at any point. How do you like a wee bit of pressure on you? How do you like, roughing it up a wee bit? Whatever it takes. And I think, sometimes when you've got to just, if it's not going right, the training ground methods aren't working in a match. I'm not saying they won't work every match, but sometimes it's just not your day. Like Amy said at the start of the show, just, I don't know, do something a wee bit naughty. Find out about the personality of the defender you're against. If you're not happy with the service you're getting, ask some questions of him. If you can't do it with the football, ask some other question in a different way. And I think by that wee push by Kyogo was actually in desperation. I think Kyogo was frustrated at the defender in any way, shape or form. I think he was a bit cute by pushing him first. And then you see by the reaction that we actually missed an opportunity for 90 minutes there yesterday that we could have explored far earlier in the game. And if Giakoumakis was to hit his daisy cutter penalty after, say, we got it after an hour, we'd have had longer to remedy it, and we'd been playing against 10 men from then, because I think we've got to exploit aspects like that as well. You can't always win pretty, Paul.
Also showed you how easy it was to contain Giakoumakis. You know what I mean? Which was more worrying than anything else. I mean, all that guy did was man-mark him, and man-marked him at the game, because he never tried anything different, as you say. Didn't try once to, go toe-to-toe with him, ruffle him up, or bend runs or walk away from him, or he just stood there, static most of the time. Or, as Paul said, how can a centre forward get repeatedly caught underneath cross balls coming into the box? Must be able to read one of them, surely. I think for me, you can see it. when you're a centre forward, you can see the player advancing down the wing, so you kind of know where you should be.
I think the biggest problem for me with regards to the crosses are the quality of said crosses, and then having the ability to figure out pretty early on, this isn't working and we do need to change it. But the point that you made, Russell, in relation to being a bit naughty, as you describe it, Kyogo did just that, right? And he wins the penalty, and that's fine. But my biggest concern now is the way that, and this it was always going to happen, the way that certain people have reacted to what Kyogo did, I think will result in him being targeted, Amy, as, from the officials every single time he goes down. I think that is what's going to be the result of him winning that penalty. Did he do the right thing? Yes, he did, because he gave us an opportunity to win the game. It's as simple as that. And you can get the purists out there saying, you want to cheat to win a football game. He was slapped. Yeah, he might have overreacted, but it's the slap you're getting the penalty for, not because Kyogo's fallen down. So at the end of the day, my biggest concern in relation to that, as well as the weak nature of the penalty, is the fact that I now think, because of the furore that this has created, Kyogo's going to be targeted for simulation, for example. Amy, do you think that's an issue?
I wouldn't put it past, opposition players or against the officials at this point as well. I think we are all sick to the back teeth of, one, having to talk about the officials, but two, having to watch the officials across the Scottish game. Again, it's been a full weekend of ridiculous decisions, mouth-dropping decisions, anything you want to call it, but it's not just Celtic as well. And I think that's a key point. I think the standard is just so abysmally poor. I think it shows as well there's such this small group of top officials that we actually have, that like Nick Walsh is yet again getting a Rangers game. It's just regurgitation, and there's not enough young referees coming through, new referees coming through to try and dispense them around the top league. And you are always going to have the same referee 7-8 times a season easily, because it is such a small group. And that is my worry about Kyogo, and it's been the worry for many years now, because you're constantly going to face these referees. There are many who it's clear they have a little thing against players, and you can speak to referees as well. They have their favourites, as in like captains that they can go to, players that they feel comfortable talking to, and that's rightly so. But they'll also, they are a human and being in themselves, and as much as we say they can make a human error, they also have like human preferences, and that some will like and some won't. And I just think it's becoming abundantly clear, even so early on in this season, as to who those referees and who those players exactly are. Yeah,
Bobby Madden likes Halliday, doesn't he? He's wee open goal buddy. And then when Halliday goes through McGregor on the opening day of the season, he didn't see it. Interesting, that.
We're talking about players being targeted. Callum McGregor's been targeted this season. Right? There's been a Halliday one, and there was a 4-minute or 5-minute spell on Saturday where Callum McGregor was fouled about 5 or 6 times, and Bobby Madden let the play go on. I mean, the Celtic supporters were apoplectic at one point, and he let the play go on because he thought there was some kind of advantage. If a player's been fouled, he's been fouled. Blow for it. You know what I mean? Call it back. Give them that advantage, because I'm sure, because I was watching, I was like, wait a minute, Bobby. The guy's clearly getting fouled. And you take it back to the Halliday one, well, that's not a foul. That could have been a career ender if he really catches him right.
That was a shocker, Tony. That was a shocker.
A shocker in the true sense of the word. But on Saturday, he was being targeted for fouls, not shockers, but some robust challenges, and also the niggly ones where you just body check them off the ball, the wee cynical ones. And I think at one point, Callum McGregor lay on the floor and went, right, that's the way it's going to be. I'm getting nothing. I'll just have to get on with it. But you're asking for fairness. You're not asking for favours. Just, abide by the rules. If a player's been fouled, he's been fouled. And as much as you talk about Kyogo maybe getting targeted, well, that remains to be seen. But I have noticed that Callum McGregor's copped the brunt of a few challenges and cynical ones and nasty ones this season already. And it's shown no sign of stopping, because if they stop the quarterback, as they say, sack the quarterback, that's what they're doing to McGregor. It was the old tactic of whenever Paul McStay got the ball, You know, people pass the ball back to Paul McStay and people would go in and crunch him because your first one was free. It's kind of that. It reminds me of that. You know, Paul McStay put up with so much, and McGregor's now feeling that because he's that pivotal character in that Celtic team, and he's having to deal with that kind of thing. And all you're wanting is protection from referees if guys are going to, you know, commit fouls against you, basically.
You mentioned Paul McStay. You know, I was talking just the other day there that his career was ended very, very, you know, prematurely. When you look at the games he played from his introduction to the Celtic side as a 17-year-old, you know, he was in his early 30s when he finally had to retire because of that troublesome ankle. Now, he played a lot of football, but as you see, he came under a lot of abuse when Scottish football was a completely different game back in the 80s and 90s, Tony. But on the point of the McStays, check out the social media pages. We are supporting Willie McStay's big sleep out this weekend in Sligo, and he's going to come into the studio at some point this week and talk to us. So check out the links and support Willie's sleep out. He's actually doing it with his wife. So both of them have a Just Giving page, and they are going to be competing against each other to see who gets the most, Mary or Willie, who knows. Michael comes in and says, unless the boards from clubs don't go higher than the SFA, the standard of refs and these ridiculous decisions won't change. Well, it was discussed and confirmed at the fans forum, Amy, that VAR is definitely a hot topic in terms of Celtic pushing and lobbying for its introduction, and we expect that to be in place at the beginning of next season. But the big question, I guess, would be, will that finally end this type of debate, or will it continue to rage on next season when we're talking about the bad decisions by the refs?
It will continue to rage on because it's going to be the same sort of guys that are operating it. You know, just it all comes back to that kind of pool, that small pool of referees that I was just referring to there. They have to be, if you're going to be in control of VAR, you've got to be of the top standard, the top band. So, you know, it's just going to be the same guys running it. You'll have them in the VAR box one week, and then the next game week you'll have them on the pitch. It's just going to be a vicious cycle. The standard needs to improve. I don't know how. You know, obviously we've all spoke about perhaps going full time, or there needs to be something. You know, there's obviously a lack of desire of young referees. You never really see. You know, it's been the same cohort for a few years now, and it's only getting smaller because the older guys and the more experienced guys, they're leaving for whatever reason. Again, it's just going to be the same. I don't see how VAR will really aid the debate really in Scottish football.
You know, when you look at it, the worst part of it for me, Russell, at the weekend was when you look at the 85% possession in a 96-minute game, yet Celtic and Livingston were both penalised for 10 fouls. I mean, I can't even figure that one out. How is that possible? That's the kind of small inconsistencies that continually happen, and they do affect the outcome of games over a season. Of course they do. But do you think VAR is the way forward? Is that going to make any difference in Scottish football, Russell?
My understanding is there's two options of VAR that you can go down. And one would be operated by your own governing body, and then the more expensive model is the one that you see, you know, getting used in the Premier League and things like that. So whether we're not going to be able to afford the more expensive model, I cannot agree with Amy enough. You're then going to go, well, who was on the VAR? Find it. I want their names as well, and then before you know it, it'll go back to, you remember when the compliance officer had our season, you know, our big one season wonder, and the compliance officer was never out the news, and we wanted to know who the three referees were that 2 out of 3 never gave that decision, and you're going to go back to that, I'm afraid, and it's a damn indictment of where we are in Scottish football. As none of us we're all guilty of immaturity with a lot of it, you know, and I think the thing is, the referees do not help themselves. I was there on Saturday, and Bobby Madden was getting it tight, you know, from 3/4 of the stadium, almost the whole game, because of so many examples of fouls on Celtic players that he's just letting go. Mm-hmm. And of course, logic tells you, Paul, 85% possession, what team had the more fouls? Right? It's a no-brainer. You put your house on it, who's had more fouls? If they've had the same amount of fouls, it's physically impossible. And I would actually flip it very quickly as well, if I may, and say the reason we're told penalty Rangers so often is because they always have the ball and they always have it in the other team's box more than the teams against them. That's why they don't concede penalties. That's why they get them. Well, let's apply the same logic to Saturday. 85% possession and 15% possession, same amount of fouls. Do the math. It don't add up either way. So I'm not saying, by the way, a conspiracy in the Rangers side of things. I'm just applying their logic when they defend the penalty record. Let's say I agree with them, to play even further devil's advocate. I agree with you. Now, please put your theory onto the stat we just gave you from Saturday and tell me I'm losing my mind.
Very well put.
You lost that long ago, Russell.
Alfred Nobel, welcome back to the show. You're watching on YouTube. Welcome to everybody who's watching. Over 1,000 on this Monday afternoon's bulletin. Livingston defence had it easy on Saturday, under no pressure. I think that was the biggest frustration, Alfred, because we didn't put them under any other pressure. They were quite comfortable the way we were playing. They could manage the balls coming into the box, and in actual fact, they allowed them to come in because they could deal with them. So I think Alfred was 100% correct there, Tony.
Paul, what was the difference between that game and the game at the Tony Macaroni? Livingston actually attacked and scored in the Tony Macaroni.
Correct.
The same game.
Yep.
And Ange Postecoglou watched that 90 minutes at Livingston and then watched our first half unfold the same way, and he didn't do anything to change it until, 70 minutes or something? Was that what we said?
Well, this was a point that I spoke about after the game with Laura, because 75 minutes was where I was thinking, oh no, this is going to be, and I'm thinking, oh, the post-match, oh dear, Monday, I'm going to have to speak about this. I knew at that point we weren't going to win, right? And then you were thrown a lifeline with a penalty kick.
Yeah.
But after the penalty, and this is going to be forgotten because of all the talk about the penalty, we had two golden opportunities on minute 95 and 96 to win this game. So even after the penalty, you've got a chance, right, where Jamesy Forrest comes in, and I can forgive him because he's maybe just coming into the play and getting up to speed. Yeah. It's just, I don't know what word you would use, Russell. You're coming up with a lot of good words in the last couple of bulletins. But I was going to say something, but it involves a sweary word, and I'll try not to. But he just swung at this thing and missed it. But then Giacomakis, who's just missed a penalty, done exactly the same. Both of them, 9-10 yards from the goal, you're thinking, oh my word, after the penalty, that's definitely going to be our final chance. No, we get another chance a minute later. Turnbull, and he skies it. Christie-esque sky right over the bar. And that was virtually the last kick of the ball. So even though, right, the penalty miss is going to be getting all the kind of focus, we had two brilliant chances, and there's two players there in Forrest and Turnbull. You'd have put your mortgage on, Amy. So we have to be more clinical when the chances come.
3 glaring opportunities, like you say, in those dying minutes, they have to get put away. As Tony referred to earlier, that you rattle the penalty, well, then you absolutely ensure that ball's making the back of the net in the 95th or 96th minute. You chuck everything at that. Again, I can kind of, sway a little bit with you that Forrest, he is just coming back, and I'm not just trying to give James Forrest a little bit of leeway because we're all kind of on the James Forrest boat, but, other players have kind of had that, leeway and let off as well. So, and the Turnbull chance as well, you want it to fall to him because you think, right, there's a guy, although he does sky a hell of a lot, like you say, he can also, pick one out, and that was the time. But it's these small margins, again, that you need them to swing in your favour. But like you say, 3 massive opportunities in extra time.
I think when the ball's coming across, the amount of times we've seen Jamesy Forrest just slotting that away, you'd say, right, let that one fall to Forrest. And then in the box, one of the kind of dead ball experts that we have, you give him a chance 12 yards out, who's going to score it? David Turnbull's going to score that, isn't he? No. It just wasn't a good day at the office again. But I'm actually looking ahead to Thursday, because before the game, and this wasn't a Nostradamus moment, Russell Boyce, by myself, but I said, what if Starfelt gets injured? Because I was looking through the spine of that team, and my big concern about Starfelt was the fact that we don't have a real natural replacement on the left side of central defence other than Liam Scales. And the unthinkable happened, and it wasn't because of a bad challenge. He just pulled up. It looked as though he stretched his left leg, but he's pulled up on the right-hand side. We don't know if he's going to be playing yet. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section if there's been an update on that. But this morning when I was checking, we don't know if he's going to make it. Julien's not ready yet. Beaton filled in for him at the weekend. Scales and Welsh are centre half. Scales tends to play on the left. What do we do on Thursday? I'll come to yourself first, Russell, if Starfelt doesn't make it.
Well, for me, it would be Stephen Welsh. I've got issues with Beaton still. I think I felt in the midfield, I think he slows things down. I don't think, the thing is, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but if Beaton makes a mistake, he doesn't get a fair crack of the whip from the fans because of the accumulation of them over the time he's been there. He is a bit of a whipping boy, if you like, you know. And by the way, you only look at that, what he did against Midtjylland, look no further than that, look no further than Ibrox, you know, and you think, well, you bring it on yourself at times. And I just think it's one of those games. Ferencváros is eerily similar to Midtjylland. I think they're two teams similar in standard that, if, you know, I know Ferencváros maybe were in the Champions League last year and maybe think they're a bit better, but for me, I didn't see much between them when I've watched, you know, the two games versus Midtjylland and the one versus Ferencváros so far. So I think these sort of games it's paramount we win that if we want to qualify. And as I've said, I don't subscribe to the whole let's settle for a place in the Conference League. Let's give ourselves every opportunity to be in the running for, you know, the next phase of the Europa League. Let's not dumb down our standards at Celtic any further than what we already have, since we've, you know, sort of just given up on Champions League football. Has that been some sort of thing in the distance that we can look at, you know, from afar? I don't like that.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point, Russell, because when we started a Celtic State of Mind, Kevin and I used to have that argument, debate, conversation, discussion, whatever you want to call it, where Kevin kept saying we're no longer a Champions League club, and I was looking at Brendan Rodgers' side, one of the best football sides I've ever watched in my Celtic supporting life, and I thought, no, we can still do something in the Champions League. Now we're talking, and this is frightening to say it, are we even a Europa League club? And that's what you're talking about. It's the downgrading of expectations, isn't it?
And I think the hunger that you're seeing from Ralston of late now, I'm convinced in Scottish football, and I know this is obviously a European match we're talking about, but Scottish teams, all good Scottish teams that you've seen throughout the years, have that wee blend. You have a lot of technicians in there, particularly in the modern day game, right? That seems to be the focal point. I still think you need things in your Celtic in Europe, like grit, determination, and all that, all these sort of old school traits. I still think you need the odd player sprinkled in your team that have got that. And I think Stephen Welsh will be looking at how Ralston has capitalised on his opportunity and will be going, well, I bring all that to the table and I'm probably as good a footballer. Why can't I get my run? And if an opportunity arises to Welsh, for Welsh and Beaton, my opinion would be the hungrier of the two would be Stephen Welsh. No offence, Beaton, but I just think there's a shining example in the team right now of everything you can achieve still at Celtic. Even if there is a player that's cost millions of pounds as an international, such as Juranovic, he's been shoehorned at left back right now, such as the progress and the earning of the jersey that Tony Ralston's done. So this opportunity might be fortuitous because Julian's not back yet, but Welsh should be sitting there going, I've got now the template right two positions along for me is Ralston. You know, I could come into that and just look at him and go, I'm going to do the same as him and own this. And I would 100% play him ahead of near Beaton.
Listen, I agree with that, and I agree with the rationale behind it as well, Russell. Interestingly enough, only Welsh and Jota were seen fixing their hair before that Halloween video was filmed, so I don't know what that says about them as well. However, I actually don't think Ange will go for that option, although that is the option I would go for the same reasons as yourself. I think that he's going to go Beaton at the back, and he's going to reintroduce James McCarthy to the fold. It was talking, Tony, after the game or just before the game about McCarthy, the fact that he doesn't see his fitness as being a long-term issue at Celtic. I think he will put him back in. I think he's going to go for experience and he'll play Beaton centre-half. What's your thoughts?
You reap what you sow with Beaton. He's a big game player, Beaton, a big game clanger merchant. He's letting you down so often. So, you know what I mean? You are putting your Europa League qualification chances at risk if you put Beaton at the back of the pack. Just keep him in a number 6 away from harm. Even still in a number 6 position, he's a danger to his own team at times by not picking up at corners and things like that and letting Aberdeen players out jump him and score with a shoulder at Pataudry. But I don't want Beaton anywhere near that defence. You know, he's had too many chances to prove and cement a position there, and he's let you down too often. So, as Russell says, let's have a rip at these last few games that we've got in the Europa League. I want to go through. I don't want to meekly call it a day in your European, or certainly in the Europa League. Because if we bounce into the conference, man, how devastated will you feel there? You know, it's just
I'll
like,
put a tenner on us winning it if we do. That's what I'll do. Yeah.
well, and then if you get beaten that, you go into the Intertoto or something like that. I don't know what happens then, you know. So, or the Texaco Cup or something, God knows.
Remember the Inter-Italian trophy as well that was played between English and Italian clubs. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. But, you know, let's have a, you know, let's be optimistic. Let's raise our expectation. Let's go and win these games. Go and play a natural centre half there. And Russell's right. If Welsh can't learn for Ralston, can't learn for Joe Hart at the back, talking to them and, you know, using all that experience and saying, listen, you've got this, you know, you're out the team, you're back in, you know, hopefully Ange gives the boy, because, you know, his confidence will be a bit, I won't say shattered, but, you know, because he did nothing wrong to be, you know, out the side, but he found himself out the side having done, no, not much wrong. So I think you turn on and say to him, look, I'm going to trust you with a mission of real importance. We're going away to win here. We're going away to keep our Europa League qualification, you know, hopes alive in the group. We want to rattle off some wins here and do this. Can I trust you? Yeah, you can trust me, right? It's yours. You know, if you go with Beaton, then again, it's like Saturday when you see that starting lineup and the Beaton's at the back, Beaton's at the back, you're like that. Oh, you're on edge, aren't you? Mm. You're on edge. And then if something happens, Russell says he'll not get cut any slack. You know, he's there out of necessity, not because he should be there, Beaton, and that's a problem. You know, and you know, you probably gathered I'm not a lover of Beaton, and that's fair enough. You're allowed opinions on players, but I just can't see why he just constantly turns up. And every time he turns up, he's turning up in important games. You know, and that's you know, and your heart just sinks when you see him maybe having to revert to Beaton at the back. No, go with Welsh. I'd even go with Scales if he was unsure about Welsh. I'd give Scales a try. There you go. That's how much I don't want Beaton at the back of the pack on Thursday night.
I get a feeling he's going to play Beaton. Sorry, Tony. Is Starfelt definitely out? We don't know yet. Finn Fogel, we don't know. It looks like a hamstring. It's a
hamstring, that's 2 or 3 weeks, isn't it? Usually.
We'll find out in the coming days. I am all for what Tony and Russell are saying, Amy. I'm a big fan of Stephen Welsh anyway. I think the last time he played was against Livy away. I think that was the last time that he played in that 1-0 defeat. And I thought he came in and done really well last season under difficult circumstances. I think he was thrown in a wee bit this season as well. He partnered Beaton, he then partnered Dane Murray, didn't he? Mm-hmm. In the second leg against Midtjylland. And he's basically, he's playing second fiddle at this moment in time. I would always go for the natural player within that position. So I would go for Welsh. The reason I wouldn't go for Scales is simply down to the fact that he's not played enough games, I don't think. You know, I think Stevie Welsh, he's definitely got the games under his belt. He's got the European experience under his belt. But there's something telling me that he's going to go for experience. We spoke about it last week. Beaton and Rogic are both coming up for 9 years at the club next year, which is frightening. Because I still don't think about Beaton and Rogic being there for almost a decade, but that's how long they've been there. And I get the feeling he's going to go for experience. Amy, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it does kind of seem to, as Tony said, he likes to give Beaton the nod out of nowhere, really, in the big games. I'm with you. You know, I'm a big fan of Stephen Welsh. I think everything last season, you know, he actually was one of the players who we really spoke about in confidence coming into this season, you know, talking about it in advance, saying, you know, that's one guy we really hope can kick on because he showed real leadership at such a young age, you know, and he was probably one of the shining lights towards the end of last season as well. So there were quite big expectations for him, and I understand, I think, obviously there was a little mistake against Rangers, but you say mistake, it wasn't anything glaring. Like, obviously I know it led to the goal sort of thing, but it wasn't an absolute howler when you in comparison to, you know, the amount of howlers that Nir Bitton has cost this side, and his 9-year run, whatever, how you like you say, I can't quite believe that myself, but I am exactly in the same kind of mindset. I don't think anyone can really, you know, see Bitton at centre half and get excited or get or feel comfortable about it, because there is always that risk that something could go wrong. I understand there's a risk with every player, but I think with Bitton there's just always that lack of concentration, you know, if it be a red card, like for something so needless. Like you're going back to Midtjylland earlier on in the season, it's just, you're like, here's a guy with 9 years experience playing at Celtic Park, why are you not using that experience, and you're still making rash, amateurish, childlike kind of fouls? So for me, I'm exactly the same, and you know, I hope Stephen Welsh gets his place, because I think he deserves it more than anything as well. He's more promising.
Yeah, even when he plays well, Bitton, like I think he did have a good game against Aberdeen up at Pittodrie. There was still that wee mistake that Tony mentioned before. He should have picked up Ferguson at that corner. So yeah, absolutely on board with that. I'm going to bring this one up from Joseph Byrne. And by the way, we don't just bring up YouTube comments. We are going live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch and Twitter. It's just that more people watch on YouTube, therefore the percentage of which, and you would think the same with fouls with your possession, Russell, the percentage of which means that more comments come in on YouTube. Joseph Byrne, Kyogo should have played instead of resting him for Europe. I think that's an indication, going back to what you say, Russell. If he was being rested for Europe, Ange fancies his chances in these last fixtures in the Europa League.
Maybe that's the case, but again, I'll stress to the importance is right now, you know, the league. And I think Europe should, of course, be carried with a certain weight of importance as well. But like Amy said earlier, get the job done against Livingston. Get the job done. And then you've actually got the luxury of going, we've got 3 points here. I can now, with 20 minutes to go, start getting key players rested, instead of them coming out deflated because the game plan was wrong. And your best player at the end of the day this season has been Kyogo. He's not on the park, and it makes a difference. It's a simple fact, you know. Abada's plucked in from obscurity when Mikey Johnston's literally came back into the team, and you know, he's out the traps like a greyhound. He must be loving life right now. Confidence soaring. He's had a new lease of life because he's got a manager who believes in him, and I think his career, had Lennon still been here, I think could have went way off track. I think Mikey Johnston would have.
I think it did actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's now feeling the love. He's got the confidence of the manager. Keep him in the team. Just play him. I don't understand. Abada right now, for me, also needs a wee bit of protection, because, as we were talking about earlier, for someone who was 19 most of this season so far, only just turned 20 at Pittodrie or whatever. Well, he turned 20 that day, not necessarily once he got to Pittodrie, but you know what I mean. He's now kind of been in and out, and his effectiveness has not been anywhere near what it was before. And I just think right now, you know, Mikey Johnston was an easy option for the weekend. Kyogo was an easy option. Start them both. Come out the traps like you did at Easter Road, right? Blow them away, and then at half time start looking at what your other options are. Who's feeling a wee knock? Because we've got four. We've got, for once, we're playing on the Saturday, and we don't play till the Thursday. We're playing the Europa League match. That's a 5-day gap for people with any bumps and bruises to shake them off. And I'll tell you as well, talking about bad challenges, Callum McGregor, I don't know if you've seen the photo from the Porteous challenge midweek.
Yeah.
He must have been carrying a knock, if anyone was, at the weekend, because he's got 2 big stud marks down his shin that looked gashes as opposed to just scrapes. So, again, all these things, if Callum McGregor's going to be started on Saturday carrying that, then just use that train of thought for the likes of Kyogo as well, and then get the job done. Whoever's feeling a knock, whoever's feeling that they're maybe a wee bit jaded, we can then hook them in a comfortable second half. Wouldn't that have been a nicer situation to be going on Thursday?
Paul, it's all about winning, right? Confidence and momentum. Doesn't matter who you're playing. See, if you're winning, you feel you can take on empty. You know, players don't feel tired and all that if you're winning. So, as Amy said and as Russell said, just get the job done. And then we'd have moved on to the next one and said, who is it? Ferencváros, right? We fancy Wabara against him as well. 6, 7, 8, 9. That's how you start building runs, building confidence, building momentum. It just seemed to have shattered on Saturday with everything that came with it. There was no performance. There was no inspiration. You know, there was no swagger. Celtic were a bit of a swagger in the past few games, and it just seemed to disappear overnight. And all the good work that you did, you undone it. Do you think we'd be having this conversation if we'd won on Saturday? We'd be like, bring Ferencvaros on. We would be like, play them all, go gung-ho, and in a way tie, because it's one of the ones that you feel you can win. So go and win it. Go and play the way you can play. Go and play the way you played in the first 20 minutes or half an hour against Betis, against Hibs. That's what we'd be saying right now. Yet that 0-0 draw has set us back so much that we're like, this guy's carrying a knocker, what do you think about this? We'd be talking about blowing Ferencvaros away again if we'd won the game. And again, I go back to it's on the manager. You pick a team that wins a football match and then you decide what you're going to do on Thursday. Just win the match, first and foremost. And then we see, like you assess the walking wounded like Starfelt and guys like that. But find a way to win. Build that momentum. Keep it going. Yeah, the league's a priority, but, why can't we fight on both fronts? I can't understand this mentality, this dumbing down, as you say. If we're not a Champions League team, we sure as hell should be a Europa League team. And a fighting one and a competitive one at that. So
the thing with fighting on both fronts, it is the momentum. You can't take your foot off the gas because of the competition you're playing in. So you've got to win every game, or that's the mentality. Now, the thing with the Ferencvaros, we looked at the list of fixtures and we did see the two games, home and away, as being the two most likely to get a result in. What I hope happens is if we do come out the traps like we did against Betis, we've learned something from the Hibs performance, particularly the second half performance, and how to actually close the game down, manage the game and get the result. We have gone over the 1 hour, and I don't want to finish off the bulletin without speaking about Ayo Abulaye and the fact that he was allegedly racially abused. That was a report that was run by Sky Sports after the game. It happened when he returned onto the park. Remember where he just appeared and everybody wondered, is he allowed back on the pitch? And apparently he has been abused by someone within the Celtic support. Marvin Bartley after the game stated it's important that a football club isn't tarred because of one racist individual within the stadium today. Now it's time to find a culprit. Absolutely. And you need to find a culprit and ban them, not just from Celtic Park. They need banned from every football stadium in the country for basically being a racist. You can't say it any other way. We had some really good discussions with John Barnes on this show. It was an interview that came in for some criticism in terms of why would you interview him? Well, the whole point of interviewing John Barnes a year or so ago was so that he could talk to us about unconscious bias, if you remember. And he spoke very well about that. And it's clear that in society, and if you're in a stadium that's got 50 or 60,000 fans in it, there will be members within that stadium who are racist. So find them out, root them out, and ban them. We don't want them associated with this football club. I think everybody is going to be in agreement. And you look at the great work that's being done, and you look at the fact that we were in Black History Month when this happened, and you look at the rich history that Celtic have in terms of diversity, and then somebody does that. It's absolutely disgraceful, and we hope that they're absolutely rooted out. And if there's anybody out there who can assist in that way, I don't care if you're called a grass. This goes beyond all that kind of stuff. We need to root them out and get them removed from our club and Scottish football as a whole. Now, that was tremendous. Thank you very much. We covered half the points simply because there's 4 of us. But I'm sure most of the other points will be covered at some point this week. Amy Caravan, Russell Boyce, I almost called you Russell Haggerty, and Anthony Haggerty, thank you once again for joining me on A Celtic